I got a personal trainer over the summer and we just did like weightlifting 3 times a week, got into swimming again. I was feeling really amazing. And I don't think about it as like, oh, I'm gonna lose weight because I just gave that up a little bit in terms of like it's not really healthy for me. It's making me more anxious and more hard on myself. But I was like, but you know what? Like when I'm with lifting weights, like I feel stronger and I feel good and happy for the day and confident. And now it's swimming and I noticed a huge difference. I was like, oh my God, when I swam, I just felt like my blood was flowing through my veins. Like you start breathing better, you sleep better. So for me, it's reframing going from feeling like I need to do this to lose weight and I need to be skinny to like, what's this making me feel? Oh, like non-scale wins, right?
Hello and welcome to PCOS Explained, formerly the PCOS Nutritionist Podcast. I'm your host, Clare Goodwin, a registered nutritionist and exercise scientist, specialising in PCOS because I have it too. Each week, we'll uncover the latest research, share inspiring stories, and provide practical tips to help you thrive with PCOS. Whether you're newly diagnosed, you've been struggling with this for a long time, or supporting someone with PCOS, this podcast is your go-to resource for empowerment, education, and community. So join us as we uncover the tools to thrive with PCOS. PCOS Explained is brought to you by our very own service, Ovie. Ovie is your go-to health service for women with PCOS. We help you improve your PCOS symptoms and prevent the long-term complications of PCOS by giving you hyper-personalised health advice based on your specific symptoms and PCOS drivers. We have a range of plans to suit your needs, from a DIY app-based program to one-on-one consultations. You choose what suits your budget and learning preference. And we offer a result-based guarantee on our Premium Plus plan, meaning that if we don't help you achieve your goal, we refund your money. Ovie is available worldwide, so it doesn't matter whether you're based in the UK, US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, or anywhere else, we can still help you. Today, I'm interviewing Aimee on her real life story with PCOS. So I think you're going to enjoy this one because I loved the analogy that Aimee used about her PCOS kind of being like the Eras Tour, right? Like I was in my weight gain era, and then I've been in my hair growth era. I've been in my reactive hypoglycemia era, which is where you get like the blood sugar crashes and hangriness and sugar cravings and extreme food noise. She also went through a disordered eating era. And so I think there's a lot here that many of you will resonate with. And I also love that Aimee talks about becoming friends with her PCOS. And I think this is a really great analogy because it encapsulates the whole concept of trying to work with our body rather than constantly fight it, and working out what works for us. So enjoy listening to this episode and Aimee's Eras tour of her PCOS and what she's found has really worked for her. Hi, Aimee. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I'm so excited to get to spend an hour with you chatting about your story. So can you please start from where you think that your PCOS journey started?
Well, thank you for having me and honored to be on here. So my PCOS journey, probably when I was in my early 20s. I think that's like a lot of people. For me, I've noticed when I was probably like 21, 22 of having really bad reactive hypoglycemia. And that was just always my issue, but I definitely had an eating disorder in college from anorexia. So I was like, oh, this is weird. Now it's affecting me. So yeah, trying to put a long story short, I moved to Italy. And when I started to eat 3 meals a day, I noticed just this like rapid weight gain. And kind of like, I remember hair growing and like places that it hadn't before, like my arm hair was darker suddenly, and like my leg hair and my period suddenly started disappearing. And I just was like gaining weight like crazy and finding stretch marks and not changing. I moved back to the US after a little bit, but not changing really any way that I ate. It was just kind of normal. And it took me up until probably 6 years of going to a doctor and trying to figure out what it was, getting blood sugar tests, constantly being told, okay, you just have reactive hypoglycemia, so you need to eat more snacks. And it didn't really make any sense. And I don't know if you want to add this or whatever, but I've moved countries 3 times. So I lived in Spain, and I went for actually a yeast infection, and the gynecologist was like, "Well, I need to do an ultrasound," which I thought was so weird. And then he was like, "Oh, do you know that you have cysts on your ovaries? And like maybe we should do some blood work." He's like, "Oh yeah, you have all these issues with your blood sugar. So let's just get you on metformin and get you with an endocrinologist." And I was like, "What? I don't know what any of this is." So yeah, it's been quite a journey since then. And lived in Spain for 3 years. From there, I came back to the US, and then I joined the protocol during 2020, because I felt like that was a time that I could really focus in on my things. And then yeah, life has had some interesting ups and downs since then. So PCOS is my best friend. She's with me everywhere through it
And it's so
all.
true. It is a good thing to kind of make peace with it and make friend with it, right? Like it is something that does stay with us. And she
Mhm.
shows up in different ways in different stages of our lives, right?
In different, yeah, exactly. In different ways, she shows her face.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I didn't know this was from PCOS. Like, I got off birth control, and then I had hydra suppurativa. What is it?
Ah, yeah, hydrogen suppurativa, like
Yeah, I got off of birth
simple
control, and then all of a
boys.
sudden I started getting these crazy bumps like on my like everywhere. And then I had to get on spironolactone. And then, it's just been fun.
Yeah. So she's in the testosterone era. Oh,
Yes.
PCOS. Like, she's in
Yeah.
and but previously she was in her like real weight gain era and like hair
Yeah,
growth
then lost the
era. And,
weight. Then all of a sudden my chin had some hair, and then that went away. And then the hydrosis, it was, yeah,
mm.
all kinds of
And
things.
so for you, because then since like 2020, life also hasn't been, we'll kind of go back to each of those bits about your journey,
Sure.
but since then it's been a real up and down for you as well, hasn't it?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I don't know how honest you want me to be or vulnerable on
Very
that.
honest. I think that everyone
Okay.
wants to hear the real good oil. Like, as I said at the start to you before we started recording this, is that it's really important for everyone to hear different stories of people that and go, wow, okay, like Aimee had a very similar experience to me, or like I feel normal, I feel validated, I feel like I can relate to someone. So yeah, as honest as you want to be, I think
Okay.
everyone would love
Yeah.
that.
Okay. So 2020 for me, so I was living in Spain for 3 years, moved to the US for graduate school. And, we had the pandemic happen that March. And I also had what was a fiance move with me. And it was a very bad situation in the end, like a lot of abuse that happened. And it's hard to like get so into it. But if any person who has experienced domestic violence knows that it's like, if you know, you know. And I think for me, like during that time, I just was really exhausted from a lot of trauma and a lot of really messed up stuff. So I just had really bad fatigue. And then finally I left. I moved home with my family. Everything was fine, safe then. But, we were still in lockdown, and I moved away from my, original where I was living. So yeah, it was really hard. And I guess that's kind of where I was motivated to maybe take some control. And I've been listening to your podcast for a long time. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna take some control of my body, because it didn't really feel like my body belonged to me for quite a while, being in a controlling, abusive situation. So that's honest. And if you want to put that in or not, it's just I do feel like it's a trigger warning. But I want to like go into detail on any of that stuff. But it was just very challenging. I think like dealing with trauma, work, therapy, things like that, and then learning to like own my body again was really challenging. Yeah. And so that's when I was put on antidepressants, which was really great. And I'm like really pro it. But, I got my life back together. I got my own apartment here, and life is good. But yeah, I got on Zoloft, and I said goodbye to my orgasms and also all my genes, because it takes all that away. So you gain weight and you lose some things on that. So, that was just how it is. I also don't know if you
Yeah.
wanted to put that in,
No,
so I'm
I
sorry.
do. No, I do. When you first said goodbye to my jeans, I was like, what do you mean? You're like, your whole genetics went, but I get it.
Oh, I'm sorry, my
Like,
pants. Yeah, all my
yeah.
pants. Like I didn't
Oh,
get I was like, shit, I gotta buy new clothes.
so you saw a really significant correlation between when you started on that, on Zoloft, and weight gain.
Well, I think it was also a lot of the stress of the situation. I was a caretaker as well to this person, and
Mm.
I just felt like I gave up a lot of my own health and my own care for myself. And again, we were just in quarantine, right? So it was just the worst timing for all of this stuff to happen. And so I kind of feel like I did gain weight during the quarantine because I just think that was natural for us to put on weight. We were all kind of freaked out, right? And comfort
Well,
food
yeah,
was
I mean, you had the most insane sort of cyclone of events, you know, like your
yeah,
quarantine experience was very, very different to mine. You know, like you had
right.
all of this, you moved back country, you moved back with like, you know, it was an abusive relationship that was also a dependent sort of care relationship as well. You weren't like
Yeah.
living where your family is, you couldn't get out of the house, but yet you didn't feel safe in your own house. Like it was like you had a massive
It was
amount.
the worst. Yeah. It was not a easy experience. So I think I ended up taking back everything, right? Like, so I'm an artist as well and finished my degree. That was something, in my experience, my ex wanted me to quit my degree and move back to another country or the past country we were in. I was like, oh. So I ended up, finishing my degree, scholarship, all the stuff, doing well. But yeah, I did notice that like with the stress of everything, like your body, I know there's like a book called like The Body Keeps Score, right? Which is like anything that trauma happens, like your body is always going to be in flight or fight mode for a
Mm,
long, long time. It's very hard to get out of. But Zoloft, Zoloft made things a lot better. And I was terrified to get on it too, because I was like, I've heard people gain weight, but it really just made my life like so much easier. I don't know, like if I'm gonna get into it, like health wise, during 2020, when I was trying to recover from this trauma, I had like I don't know if this is actually like medically correct to say adrenal fatigue, but I did have to go to the hospital for it. And because I was just too tired to like be up even after 3 p.m.
mm,
So they had to like give me all these fluids. And then I was like, my legs would just hurt all the time to where I was like, I can't even go for a walk without having to like I don't know if you remember, you and I had talked a
yeah.
long time ago, but I was like, I can't even go for a walk if without being extremely exhausted. And so it was really maintenance. And then yeah, when I was on Zoloft, I was really like, suddenly waking up, I'm like, oh, the birds are chirping this morning. Like I'm noticing the birds and I'm noticing the sun. And like I started having the energy to do those things. And I really was able to stick to the protocol, which I started exercising, started doing the high protein breakfast, which was huge difference for me, honestly. Um, Vitamins, all the stuff. And I noticed that like my numbers, even though I was gaining weight. Like I noticed that all my numbers on my blood work were really great. Like I had like kind of high to thyroid, I guess. And they were like, "Oh, we might have to put you on thyroid medication and your blood sugar's really, really high." But then once I was like getting all of this stuff together, again, even though the weight was like slowly, slowly creeping up, like everything else was doing a lot better. So I was like, I'm just gonna take like the win where I can.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
And I think that's sometimes where we have to make trade-offs in life sometimes, right? Where you're like, wow, okay, well, in this situation, my mental health, and I would say in every situation, your mental health always trumps weight, right? Like,
It
yes, well,
does.
it can be really hard, like to gain weight, because we are conditioned that that is like the worst possible thing for a female, basically, for it to happen to a female, and especially
Right.
like with a history of disordered eating and very aware of your body, and especially when you'd been through that abusive relationship where you didn't feel like your body was yours. Now to also feel a bit like that, where you're like, I can't control this. I feel like I have no control over this weight gain. But when the reason for that is so that you can actually wake up and feel like you can get through the day, being able to have that
Mhm.
the mental health to keep going through a very difficult time. So it's like, trade-off was like so much in favor of that.
It really was. Yeah. One thing I think about, like, I'll look at old pictures or something of that time. And I'm like, I didn't really notice how I looked. Like, you don't sit there and think like, man, like my body's great. Like, because you don't feel good. You don't notice it. So I feel like Zoloft made me like more okay with being chubbier. Like, it made me be like, yeah, but like I smile and laugh now, and like annoyed pictures, like I felt like I like was never smiling. Like I was just kind of like, And obviously, by the way, along with antidepressants, that was not my only answer. I did a ton of therapy, like a ton of therapy, and then a ton of like having to rebuild myself back up. So like I'm not gonna give all the credit to Zoloft. That was a lot of my own having to work on it myself. So,
You did a lot of work as well, but I think that is also really good to be like
but it
Zoloft
helped.
is part of it. And I think it's really good to hear you talking about, hey, actually my mental health and my happiness and smiling and laughing is so much more important than weight.
It really was, yeah. And you still like it,
And I think it
people
is.
still look cute anyway. You're good.
Yeah,
You
and I
know.
think that it is. It always is so much more important how we feel than how we look. Did you talk to anyone about this? Were you like, hey, I'm not really changing anything in terms of how I'm eating?
Mhm.
Because I think that while it's totally is no problem with weight, it's like, hey, when things are happening and I'm not actually changing anything, that's always worthwhile asking a question of like a medical professional and saying, hey, weight's changing. I have not changed anything. What's going on here? Did you have
Right.
those
A lot.
conversations?
Of course, all the time. I still have that conversation with my psychiatrist, like every time I see her. And I'm like, hey girl, like maybe, like, I'm not happy about this. So yeah, even I have a reproductive endocrinologist here who specializes in PCOS. And she was like, it does not matter. I don't care that you're gaining weight. Like you're doing better and your blood work is looking good. So like your weight doesn't mean who you are. But then
What
I've
an
had,
absolute legend. What's
I
her
know she's an angel.
what is
I
her
love her.
name? Because she needs massive props.
Yeah, she's amazing. She treats me like a human, which is great because other doctors are like, you're fat. So what are we gonna do? And I have had this conversation a lot of times. It's oh, like, well, that's because you're on antidepressants, so then you're gonna want to eat more because you're happier. And I'm like, no, I'm eating the same. Because I noticed when I was on Metformin the first time that I ate like the same amount, and I lost weight, right? And then I don't know, I guess your body gets accustomed to Metformin. We've had that conversation, but some people, they just like gain the weight back, and you're like, damn it. But anyway, so
That's what happened to you on
sorry for
metformin?
the swearing.
No, I think it's good to speak about. I've certainly seen that clinically with so many patients is that they might lose like initially a little bit of weight on metformin, probably like 5 or 6 kilos, and then they sort
Yeah.
of a lot develop like almost a resistance to it. Is that
Yeah.
what you experienced?
I lost like 30 pounds on it. I thought it was great. I was like, this
Yeah.
is the best. And so I still never got off of it either. But yeah, it didn't really matter. But I have talked to a lot of doctors about the Zoloft and weight gain. And it's kind of just been a shrug of like, yeah, that's what happens. And I'm like,
Mm,
well, is it gonna come off when I get off of it? And some people are, again, are maybe, maybe
mm,
not. They're like, just wait until you're in a good place. And then you have to kind of ask yourself, when is a good place? Like, when are you in
mm.
a good place?
I mean, I
Yeah.
think that so long as you've also got an amazing reproductive endocrinologist who's like, it doesn't matter. Like your mental health is so much more important than
Right. And the
weight
blood work.
and the blood work. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, these are all going in the right direction. So your like glucose was down, your thyroid was better, which sometimes happens. I would probably caution people in listening to this that many times thyroid replacement, like hormone, is super important. So never think that that's a bad thing. But if your thyroid is functioning better when glucose and testosterone go down, what else went down? Remind me, was it cholesterol as well? Was that the other?
Probably at that time. I know that my DHEA went down and now it's gone back up, but life is stressful.
Mm.
Sometimes it just changes. But yeah, my cortisol's it's always been high. Like
Mm.
it's been lower lately, but no matter what, my endocrinologist was like, well, you bring in the excitement. You always have the cortisol. So she's like, you're just always gonna have it high. But I'm like, is there a way I can bring it down? She's like, I don't know what more you could be doing. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
you're
And are
gonna
you
try
on
to
birth control as well?
I am on birth control. I'm on low estrogen phase, which is apparently neutral. It's been fine. It's fine. It helped the Suprativa, the skin
I can just,
thing,
yeah.
along with
Mhm.
spironolactone. Yeah, she put me on spironolactone because I was like, you know what? These bumps are now like getting on my stomach and like
Mm.
my boob. They scar, and this is weird. So that's when she was like, all right, we're gonna get you on this then.
I want to talk about those symptoms more because I think that a lot of people don't
Sure.
realize this is happening. But just going to
Yeah.
say that the birth control does increase your cortisol. So that's also probably why, right?
Oh,
So
okay. That makes sense.
personally, like my cortisol was 3 times higher than so like the upper end of the normal range in New Zealand is 500. Mine went on birth control, although there was also a lot of stress happening then, was 1500. So the birth control, it is known to increase cortisol. Whether that's necessarily like, so I think the main thing is instead of worrying about the number there, it's actually like, how do I feel? Like, can I actually function better? Because although you said before rightly that adrenal fatigue isn't a term that medicine would use anymore, it's trying to
Right.
explain what it feels like when you've been under a period of stress and your body's been in that fright and flight for so long, or for a period of time, and then suddenly it's just like it is just exhausted and it's like I can't cope anymore, and instead of
Right.
producing lots of cortisol, I'm now just going to produce none. That's what it feels like to you.
Hmm.
Technically there's a lot different going on there, but I think from how we feel and how it shows up in our body, that is actually quite a good description, is that it's like
Hmm.
I'm in that stage right now. I previously was struggling to get to sleep at night because I was so wired, but I was tired. Whereas now I can't get out of bed in the morning. I can't, as you said, I can't like stay awake after 3 o'clock. I can't walk. I'm so physically exhausted that I actually can't get out of bed or get off the couch, or in
Right.
your case, like actually having to be like hospitalized for it, which is a pretty extreme end. So, um,
Well, I had to go to emergency room. It wasn't like overnight or anything. We just didn't know what was going on. I couldn't do anything. I was like, what, do I have mono or something? Like, so yeah. Sorry to
and
interrupt.
no, not at all. I think that that's a really good like context to how it feels, how it like feels to
Mhm.
have that really extreme, and that this wouldn't be abnormal for someone who's been through the trauma that you've been through, where your stress response has been so heightened. And then after that stress response, was this after when you were kind of more back, like with your family, more safe? It was sort of after the like stress was over.
Mhm.
Yeah, which is
Mhm.
really common. It's like your body just keeps going through that stress to keep you alive, to keep you through that. Because imagine our body still thinks that we're 2,000 years ago roaming the desert.
Right.
There's tribes and there's animals that are going to kill us, and so you have to keep going to keep yourself alive through that time. And then afterwards, it's just like, oh, crash! Like I am like threat's gone, I'm done, I can now kind of like finally calm down. But then it feels all of the after effects, the ramifications of that
Yeah.
stress.
Very, very bad. Yeah.
So going back then, what does the hydrogenta suppurativa feel like? Or what did it feel like to you? Because this is something that I think that a lot of people wouldn't know what to look for.
Mine, I thought they were ingrown hairs on my armpits, which I
Mhm.
know is like, really common. And so I was like, oh, okay, that's weird. I haven't had that before.
Maybe I
And
stop shaving, or maybe I like use a different
yeah, it was
razor. You
right.
think all these things, don't you?
Yeah, it was right when I stopped birth control because I was like, well, I'm single now, so I don't need it. So, what a bad mistake that was. And so, it was just, yeah, it's really, really painful. It's more painful. It's like the worst, like ingrown hair that you've ever feeling. And they don't have a whitehead, it's just a bump. And so I thought, so are these bugs? And actually it was from your post on the lifers. And I was like,
Mm.
oh, maybe that's what I have. And then I noticed, as weird as it is, that the more dairy I ate, which I'm a slave to cheese. I can't help it. It's like I don't go for like sweets, by the way. Like when I'm really stressed, I go for cheese. I don't know, probably has the same response. But anyway, it's like right before my period. If I've been eating a lot of cheese, which I do, then I will get it and it'll be in like random places. Like sometimes it's like on my arm, like it's like on where my shoulder would be at this point. It's really
Mm.
random. But yeah, they're very painful. I got them on my, and it's just like one random one was on my stomach. And then they scar once they do kind of like go away. They just kind of like fade away. And
Mm.
then they scar really badly. And then what I've seen worse images, of course. I didn't have it as bad. But then
Yeah,
when
whatever
one
you
was,
do, don't Google hydrogen separativa because it's the
Ugh.
worst of the worst.
It's the worst. Like moon craters in people's skin somehow. It's horrific. Yeah. It's horrible. Yeah. So I didn't have that as bad, but then I got one on my breast and that's when I was like, all right, I gotta like I no, this is like it's like crawling up my body somehow. I need to get this like figured out. So spironolactone doesn't work for like 6 months, but then it started to work. And I went on low estrogen Faye,
Mm.
which is fine. I've never had issues with it, the birth control. It's just fine. It's
Yeah.
not like I tried switching 2 or 3 times because I was listening to a podcast and I was like, oh, maybe I'm on the wrong one. So I'll like test out some different ones. Ooh, no, no, no. So
Mm.
I just kept with
Yeah.
this one. This one doesn't give me side effects. I'm just gonna keep it here. Yeah.
And also too, because you're pairing it with spironolactone, it helps decrease that testosterone because it's obviously the testosterone that triggers the hydrogen separativa, or is part of the picture anyway of the hydrogen
Right.
separativa. And so hence when you went off birth control and we removed that like testosterone suppressing thing, it came out. And so, like really helpful to be on that one. And then also the spiro to help like reduce
Yeah.
the testosterone, which is a good combination.
And I would love to be a person to like not have to be on it, but like I just feel like sometimes we need medicines to help us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Like,
like what we were saying before, that life is not perfect. Sometimes you're going, like through these. And also, even if it is perfect, you're like, well, maybe I just want it for the convenience of the birth control, which is what it's designed to do, right? I think that where it does become problematic is where it's being used for purposes that it's really not designed for, like giving you a regular bleed when you're not getting a period and you're just told, oh, well, just take this, it'll fix it.
right.
And then you come off it like 10 years later and you're like, but it's not fixed. And they're like, oh no, well, now you have to go on fertility treatment. And you're like, but hold on, wasn't the pill supposed to be fixing this? And yet I've still got the problem. I think that's the really problematic thing, is people not being informed. But when you're like fully informed, you know what it's doing, and you're
Mhm.
going, yeah, cool, this really helps with these symptoms. Absolutely.
Right.
And so you
Yeah.
also mentioned before that you also tried Ozempic when you were struggling with this weight gain from Zoloft.
Yes. So my reproductive endocrinologist did not want to prescribe it to me. I'll be honest. I did have some backlash, but kept hearing great things about Ozempic. We saw all those celebrities get suddenly skinny, and every woman who grew up in the early 2000s, we were like, finally, it's my time, right? So just seemed like a really easy answer. And I went to an endocrinologist, actually for a different reason. I had a adrenal nodule or something that showed up in a scan. It was benign. Nothing happened. I don't know.
But they don't think that that was what was causing the high cortisol?
So we got a ton of testing done from it.
Mm.
Yeah, we did like a ton of like the P tests, 24-hour P tests, all these other testing, and it ended up being normal.
Mm.
So they were like, okay, that's probably not it. And I was like, well, let's talk about Ozempic. And they're like, sure, yeah, you're overweight. Let's get you on it. And it was the worst. So yeah, I could talk about
What
that.
way?
So I'm on metformin already. So I'm on like a high dose of metformin. Obviously, I'm on this big cocktail of pills. And once I was on Ozempic, I don't know. For me, and I feel like it's really dramatic for me to say like I only had one dose, but I really felt the effects. Um, I did. I had like the starting dose, and the first day I just noticed that like no matter what I was eating, like my food felt like it just stayed in my throat, like in my esophagus, and didn't feel like it was going to digest. But I was like, oh, cool. Like, oh, look, I don't have to eat. But as the days started to progress, I just noticed like I had terrible stomach issues. Oh, what a big surprise. I have stomach issues and have PCOS. Ah. Anyway, so I've already had stomach issues, but this was like tenfold. So I know that it slows the digestion of your food. But with that being said, it stays in your throat, it feels like, and it gives you horrific heartburn. Well, anyway, that's what I had. They didn't tell me what to eat either, like how to eat, but I noticed I kept throwing up every time I ate. So like I would eat something, I would make a smoothie in the morning, God forbid, and I'd like throw it up because it's like too much. And then I know that I was on too many medications, but they were like, no, 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 stay on the metformin and stay on the Ozempic. Like, let's just like really attack this, right? Yeah, I immediately would like throw up. My food couldn't digest. And then I noticed I was trying to check my blood sugar because I was like, I can't eat. So I would try to eat something afterwards, like after about an hour, I would check my blood sugar because I'd feel reactive hypoglycemia. So I'd feel
Mm,
this strong pull down where you're like, you feel exhausted, you feel shaky, you feel sick, headache. And I'd check my blood sugar and it'd be extremely low. And it
mm.
felt like no matter what I ate, because then I try to eat to bring it back up, it would go high and then low again. And I was like, oh my God, this is like how I felt before I was ever on metformin or anything. It was
Yeah,
like
this is like when you were
constant,
young, right? Like
yeah, like you're
one of the first
constantly
symptoms.
chasing it. Yeah. And I was like, and I can't eat because the more that I'm eating, then I throw up or I'm like sick. And so I thought it was the most miserable thing. I kept going on Reddit. I kept going on the protocol and being like, has anybody experienced this? Because this is the worst thing ever. And the weirdest thing is I felt really depressed because I realized that food was one thing that made me very happy and it made me absolutely disgusted with anything. And I have a lot of things that make me happy in life, but food is one joy because I lived in Europe. America's food is not the best, but you know, it's either way. So like I just whatever, I felt like I'm a foodie. So that was just really depressing. And I know it takes away that like what is it, the dopamine response of food. And I know that other people try to find something else that would give them that. But for me, it just, like, then I was like, now I'm gonna have to find another dopamine response. Like, I don't know. So it took me a couple of weeks and then I just decided to get off. I was like, you know what? And I lost weight. I did lose weight, but it was also because I was basically having like what felt like bulimia. It just felt like I was binging and purging, but not binging. And I don't think anybody can survive off of 800 calories a day. I'm sorry. It's just like that's not realistic. And I don't know. Anyway, my reproductive endocrinologist is still like, oh, but you'd be such a great candidate for it. You know, we could take you off the metformin, we could put you back on it. And I'm like, no, like I could, if I really want an eating disorder, like I can do that for free. Like, please, you know, I know it sounds really rude and crass, but like I've done it since I was 15. Like, I don't need a shot to give it to me. So
Yeah.
that was my very extremely sardonic like opinion of it. But
No, I think it's good. I think it's good to hear the real thing because so many people are only hearing the positives. As you said, it's like the media, although like a lot have never confirmed, a lot of celebrities have never confirmed that they're on it. There was some quite dramatic weight losses that happened in those
Mindy
2000s, right?
Kaling,
Like we all
please.
know the singers and the like, yeah. I mean, I think Kim Kardashian might be the one that did she say that she did take it to fit into the
I
Met
don't
Gala
think she
gown
did,
or
but
but it was highly rumored. But there was
yeah.
another very high profile singer that again lost a huge amount of weight during that time that
Mhm.
like rumored that
And they
was
don't look good. They make it's like an older look, or I even have a friend who's on it, and he's like, I gotta like get my. He's older. He's like, I gotta get my Botox a little better now because your skin is like sagging and you lose all your muscle mass. And but I know that for some people, and I do think that people who have like diabetes or whatever, it's works great. I just
yeah.
wasn't mine. It wasn't for
Yeah,
me.
exactly. But I think that it's good to hear that there's not always positive experiences because a lot of we hear is positive experiences, and also that to validate other people that are like, yeah, I also really enjoy food, and hold on, I'm taking this Zoloft to help with my depression, and yet that I'm taking this Ozempic, which is having the complete opposite effect and removing all of my dopamine. So,
Hmm.
like, what are we trying to achieve here?
Yeah,
And is
it
this the
was.
way? But was it hard for you though, getting through that when you're like, oh, I'd heard such great things, and suddenly then realizing that this was not the answer for me?
I was super sad. I still even have it in my fridge because I was like, maybe I can try it again, like maybe this is the answer. I do think now I'm thinking out loud, I'm like, "Oh, I should probably just throw that away. It's probably old." But yeah, I think there's a really big disappointment, and even with my doctors, I think some of them were disappointed. They're like, "Oh, I really wanted that to work out for you." I'm like, yeah, same here. Wouldn't that be nice? But the reality is you feel tired and depressed and you can't eat and you have really bad heartburn. Oh, and I try to eat healthy. I go, okay, you can't eat any kind of fried anything, processed anything. So I'm going to eat something very healthy. Cauliflower rice, which I hate, but I just did it anyway. Okay. I was like, okay, let's go healthy. I had such bad gas pain. I had to leave work. So I was like, this is not it for me. Like, I'm sure this side effects will subside, but it's just how fun are you to go out to brunch or something with your friends and you're like, no, I'm good. I'll have my watercress soup and just can't digest anything. I don't know. What's the point? Life is
Yeah,
short.
it's not a life, really, is it?
Yeah.
But for like for you, when
Right. For some people, it's okay. Yeah.
yeah.
For me, it
Quite
wasn't.
interesting. You said that your reproductive endocrinologist didn't want you to go on it to start with. What was her concern there?
Well, it was her, it was my other team of whatever healthcare team. My psychiatrist really didn't want me to either. I think she kind of knew it wasn't going to work out. My endocrinologist kept saying, "You don't really need it." And I was like, "No, but I want to lose weight." It's like, "Well, if you want to lose weight, I guess you could try it." But she's like, "But I'm not going to prescribe it. So you have to get it from somebody else." So, which is just, I don't know. I just found it kind of interesting. But it seems like she had a change of heart a little bit. Maybe she saw my weight and was like, "Well, actually, maybe we could try it, but it's not going to work. Everybody gains weight back anyway."
Yeah.
Well, not sorry, not everybody.
Yeah, but you're right. A lot do. But I mean, they at the moment, the guidance is still that you need to stay on it for life. There's no, the
Yeah.
guidance is still there's no coming off this. Whether that is actually the case or not, I don't think so. We're trialing with, with a few patients ways of getting them off it. With they, once they're kind of at their goal and they do want to come off it, I think there is definitely ways of doing that. But for a lot of people, what the studies show, especially for Saxenda, the kind of poor cousin to Ozempic, all of the improvements that they had during the study, like improved weight loss and improved glucose, were reversed within 4 weeks of coming off it. So I think they were on it for, it was definitely more than 16 weeks, 20, maybe it was 6 months or so, 6 months of improvements within 4 weeks, completely reversed. So yeah, at the moment, the time I last looked, they didn't have the same kind of studies for Ozempic and Manjaro and the likes. But
Mm,
so the guidance was still just, you just got to stay on this. Which for like, because if you're thinking, okay, like if someone was listening and be like, okay, I could deal with that. I could deal with the feeling ill, the not getting any pleasure from food, the like bloating. I could deal with that for a period of time if it got me to this goal. And then
mhm.
but then knowing that, wow, okay, this isn't just for a short period of time, this could potentially be for life, right?
Ever.
That's where it's like, whoa, okay, this doesn't, like, the benefit does not outweigh the effect.
I thought the same thing too, by the way. I was like, please, I have IBS. This is every day for me anyway. So what's the difference? And I legitimately remember just feeling this fatigue shake off little by little every day that I wasn't on it. And I felt better. I was like, oh my God, thank God that's over.
Mm,
But I had it worse. Like I said, I had really bad hypoglycemia constantly, like in the middle of the
mm,
night hypoglycemia.
yeah.
So mine was just, it was too extreme, I think.
Yeah. And what is that? Because you talked about that reactive hypoglycemia, which you had when you were younger. So reactive hypoglycemia felt like to you, you said it was like shakiness, the, like not being able to kind of concentrate, think, like those sort of symptoms. Did you feel like you were urged to go and find kind of sugary or like foods to bring your blood sugar back
Yes.
up.
Yeah, just like glucose tablets because I knew I could digest that. And that's not any life, you know?
Mm,
And yeah, anything sweet, high carb. I noticed that the quality of the food that I ate was also really bad because you aren't hungry and when you're nauseous, you kind of want to go for comfort foods.
mhm,
Not like heavy comfort foods, but you're like, well, I can't really eat anything, so I'm just gonna have a bowl of Cheerios and
mm.
maybe I can digest that. And like, okay, that wouldn't that be better if you just had a well-rounded meal? I don't know. And you'd feel good. So, but
Because this reactive
yeah.
hypoglycemia had improved, right, when you started
Oh,
doing some
tremendously, yeah.
changes. And I think that's where when you see it, you're like, oh, I know how good things can feel, and I don't want to come back to this.
Right. And it wasn't even just metformin, it was really actually doing the high protein breakfast with like a lower carb. I have to have a little carb in there because
Mm,
I'm kind of tired. I high cortisol, I don't know. And it really changed. I was able to like not constantly be like, oh my gosh, I gotta eat. It's only been 2 hours after breakfast, right?
mm,
I notice the difference when I do eat a normal breakfast, which I do because I live. And like 2 hours later, I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of hungry actually. I need a snack. And I noticed the high protein just it lasts me, but insulin is my issue. But I couldn't do it with the Ozempic.
yeah.
Couldn't stomach anything. So I just went with high carbs and then naturally my blood sugar shot down and that I would be trying to chase it with some kind of sugar or something and then it would go down again. So I was like, this is horrific. And yeah, so reactive hypoglycemia is uh like within an hour, I think it is after you eat that you feel suddenly hungry again, but you're not. You're like, it doesn't make a lot of sense because you're like, I just ate though. But you feel, for me, it's always like, yeah, you need sugar. It's like you can feel it in your mouth, like that you need something sugary immediately, like something sweet. And then you start to get like just very annoyed, very headache, shaky. And I have in the past had a long time ago, I have had actually convulsions from
Mm,
hypoglycemia, reactive hypoglycemia, actually. That was
wow.
before metformin, before all the changes. Yeah.
Mm,
That's when I was like, something's wrong.
yeah.
So,
This is something, yeah, something's not right here. I'm the same. I
yeah.
actually fainted a couple of times from it. Um,
Yeah.
and I was like, whoa, okay, this is dangerous. Like this, we've got
You
to
were
sort
like,
this
what's
out.
wrong with you? You just ate a couple hours ago, you
Yeah.
know?
And you're like, yeah, I know. But it's like literally
Yep.
it's been 5 minutes past 2 hours. I can't go this long.
I had a male physician a long time ago before I knew I had PCOS tell me that it was anxiety. And so then he told me to just take Xanax twice a day, which is a terrible idea. And it's a very addictive medication, you know?
Mm,
And it did not do anything. I was like, this didn't fix it. So yeah.
yeah, it's that understanding. But it was so funny when you're talking about it before. It sounds like, we sound like a drug addict when we're like the uppers and downers. It's like have the
Yeah.
sugar, well, have the kind of high carby food that you feel like when you're on the Ozempic, and then your blood sugar goes down and you need to bring something to get it back up. And then it's just like, as you said,
Yes.
it's like constantly chasing it
And
because
you're
you're like,
constantly checking. You look psycho.
yeah. And I don't think that
Yeah.
other people can understand that unless you felt the feeling of your blood sugar going low and the panic that you feel because you know what happens when this happens. It's yeah, it's an awful feeling.
I dealt 6 years with that, and I wish so much that I had like found this kind of podcast or something sooner, just so I could have known that I wasn't alone. I just thought that I had really bad anxiety or something, and I could not understand how I needed to eat so many snacks and that they still weren't working. I was like, this doesn't make any sense, you know. But I was having like sugary oatmeal for breakfast, and then that's it,
Yeah.
you know. I was
But
like,
that, I mean, you were told, right? They were
yeah,
told that oatmeal was such a healthy breakfast. And it and it
fire.
can be, right? It can be, but just not for our
Yeah.
physiology.
Yeah, nobody tells you, you know. So, yeah.
And so, how are you feeling now in general? Like now that you're kind of like through this time and because, off the Ozempic and kind of back to more your like baseline.
Well, right now is a little weird. I'm doing a lot better in terms of like mental health and like professionally. Right now, I'm an adjunct professor, so it's just different kind of stress than grad school. And I'm an artist as well. So that's like, feel like I have a different kind of job. Like I just had a solo exhibition, which
Oh my
was
God,
huge.
amazing.
Well, a
Yeah.
huge accomplishment, I should say. It wasn't a huge exhibition, but it was huge accomplishment, right?
Yeah.
And so I just finished that and I just finished the semester, just put in final grades. So for me, today I feel better, but I think the weeks leading up to this, I got a personal trainer over the summer and we just did like weightlifting 3 times a week, got into swimming again. I was feeling really amazing. And only just this last month, I got in a car accident. So I just had to pause. And so
Mm.
for that, I'm a little bit like, not as like my chipper self, but I just got back into swimming again because I'm like, you know what? I I can't lift weights. Walking kind of hurts because I kind of hurt my ankle and I hurt my wrist, all this stuff. Got the show done, but I can swim. So it's just like trying to find that like and I don't think about it as like, oh, I'm gonna lose weight because I just gave that up a little bit in terms of like it's not really healthy for me. It's making me more anxious and more hard on myself. But I was like, but you know what? Like when I'm lifting weights, like I feel stronger and I feel good. And then like I feel like happy for the day and I feel confident. And now it's swimming and I noticed a huge difference. I was like, oh my God, when I swam, I just felt like my blood was flowing through my veins. You know what I mean? Like I just felt a little more lifted or something. Like you start breathing better, you sleep better. So for me, it's reframing working out to going from feeling like I need to do this to lose weight and I need to be skinny to like, how is this making me feel? Oh, like non-scale wins, right? Like I'm sleeping better. Cool. Like I'm lifting more weights. Awesome. So yeah, that's so good. The answer, short answer, good.
Yeah, and I
Better.
think that's an incredible way to look at exercise. I think it should really be what comes first is those non-scale improvements that we see rather than focus on weight. We'll focus on exercise for weight loss because it's
Yeah.
just, it's not really what it's intended to do. It's intended to help us become fitter, which doesn't necessarily equal weight loss, especially if there's something else going on like Zoloft or other medications that are hindering that normal metabolism. So
Right.
I think that when we can focus on those other improvements, then it spurs us on to continue that for like the mental health benefits, rather than if we were just looking at it from a weight loss perspective, we'd be like, oh, well, this is useless. Nothing's happening. So I'm just going to give it up and lose all those potential amazing other benefits.
Right. Like that was one thing that me and my trainer got really into was just like, you just need to sleep. Like, and then I was like, well, I know I need to walk, but like, what kind of treadmill exercise can I do? Like, should I do an incline this? And she's like, how about you just like put away your phone and you go for a walk in the morning and get some sunshine? Like, just get some sun on your eyes. And I was like, oh, but that's not hard. Okay. Right. But it's just so easy for us to be like, and I think that if the weight were to naturally fall off, if it does one day, great. But it's more of like taking care. There's just a lot more other things to take care of. And then the body is just like kind of a vessel that gets you from A to B. I don't know. So yeah, I'm trying to be like body neutral in my life right now, where it's like have a body. And I started at like only being able to lift 8-pound dumbbells, and now I'm at 15. To me, that's good, you know? So
Yeah, that's amazing. I love her advice. I love her advice. Like, just actually, like, no, are you really going to enjoy that treadmill walk? Like, if so,
right.
like, if that's for you, like, you want to, like, you really love watching your show on Netflix, awesome, cool. That's a great place to do it. And if that's what brings you joy, great. But
Mhm.
if what brings you joy, putting your phone away and going out and like feeling the sun on your face and hearing the birds and
Right.
concentrating on what you can smell and what you can see. And if that brings you more joy, then amazing. What a great
Yeah,
advice.
it is. It's basic, but it's effective.
Yeah, but we're so conditioned to, as you said, it's like, well, it doesn't feel hard. We're so conditioned that exercise needs to be hard. Unless we are absolutely killing ourselves in that session, then it's not effective. And that's not true.
Right. And if you have really high cortisol, it's a really bad idea. I've also learned. So like, oh, that's why I'm exhausted for the entire day. That
Yeah,
doesn't not why I worked out, right?
exactly. And that's, I think that's a really good thing. That's what I always ask people when they say, oh, I've got PCOS, so can I run? I'm like, well, that doesn't really matter whether you've got PCOS or not. Let's talk about how you feel when you've been exercising. like how your stress hormones are working. Are you exhausted for more than 15 minutes after you've exercised? Yeah. Okay, then that's not working for you. Let's find some other things to help those adrenals for the meantime. So great
That's how
advice.
I feel sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you could give anyone a piece of advice who is maybe going back to the Aimee that was diagnosed when you're in, when you're in Spain, or even prior to that, feeling the symptoms that you're feeling, what would you tell her?
Oh, this feels like a therapy session. I was kidding. Just that you're not alone and things do get better, and find doctors that treat you like you're a human and don't treat you like a number that you have to, constantly be weighed. Throw out the fucking scale. Sorry for the swearing. Throw out the scale. And oof. I guess advice for people is just show up for yourself. Don't show up for anybody else. Yeah. I think
And
that's the
any
best.
advice in getting towards this like more body neutrality?
Yeah. Oh, for that, like
Yeah.
advice for that. Oh, that no one is perfect and that they can ever feel neutral, and nobody, like, you have society constantly telling you that you need to look a certain way, and you have a lot of pushback from everybody. I think it's something I'm still struggling with and trying to get through, but I think your happiness is just, it's going to be better, and everybody looks more attractive when they're more happy anyway. Like, right? So,
Absolutely. But I like that advice that when you're on this journey of body neutrality, don't feel like you fail just because you have some negative thoughts, because some of the time the negative thoughts are put on you by society or other people, and it is incredibly hard to maintain neutrality when you go to the doctor and they're like, oh, well, we need to weigh you, or like you need to lose weight, and you're like,
positivity is impossible.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love myself. I'm like, oh, I do love my hair. Oh, I do love this. But like, it's hard. It's impossible to be like that all the time. You're on Instagram, or you're on social media, or you're in fashion, whatever that is. I would say it's impossible, but it's okay.
I think
Yeah.
that's really true, that if you're maybe this like body positivity is an impossible expectation, we're setting ourselves up for failure if we feel like that's the case. But what we can strive for is more that body neutrality most of
Right.
the time, right? Most of the
Like,
time,
I have a
given that we're
body.
always going to have these triggers.
Yeah, bodies always change. Let's get from A to B, not A to Z. Your body's constantly changing. I notice as I'm getting older as well, like I'm in my early 30s, but like your body changes. It's like your hips suddenly, where did these come from? Like baby making hips. And like it's just the bodies are always changing every single day. So just you gotta just accept like where it is right now and what's doing for you right now. And that's like that's where my neutrality is I'm like, today my body is gonna make me swim, or I'm gonna swim, and then I'm gonna put a heating pad on my back and I'm gonna relax and take a nap. Like I just, I'm not gonna be like, let me weigh myself after, let me like see how many inches I lost. What's the point?
Let me try and squeeze myself into these pants that definitely no longer fit and make me feel awful
No,
about myself.
get rid of the pants. That was the other thing. Get rid of the pants. Don't put them in the closet and think that once someday they'll fit. They're going to be out of style. Just get new pants. That's the other advice. I really want that advice. Just get
Good.
new
I
ones.
love it.
Just buy new clothes.
Love it.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well,
Huge
thank you
advice.
so much, Aimee. Amazing
Thank
conversation.
you.
And I'm sure that so many people will get so much from this in terms of validation and understanding and feeling really heard and seen. So thank you so much for being so open and honest and sharing with us.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
If you're finding value from these podcasts, then we'd be so grateful if you could hit follow on the PCOS Explained podcast. This means that not only you'll get the latest releases, but also that other people are more likely to find this podcast. That's the way the algorithm works. And we all know how important it is to get good information about PCOS. So if you can hit that follow button, it means that people with PCOS that don't know that this podcast exists are more likely to find it. So thank you so much for your help there. Now stand by for our disclaimer. The information contained in this podcast has been prepared for the purpose of providing information, including about the PCOS nutritionist products and services, and is designed to support clients' overall wellness. It is not intended to provide medical advice or designed to rectify, treat, or cure any specific medical conditions or diseases. Nothing stated or shared in our podcast is intended to be and must not be taken to be medical advice. Please seek the advice of professionals as appropriate regarding the evaluation of any specific information, opinion, advice, or content contained in our podcast.